Hello, and thank you for joining Women Talk Money. My name is Alex Roca, and I will be your host for today's conversation. This is our Back to School two-part series. Today is lesson one, focusing on the how-tos of financial planning, where we'll refresh the fundamentals, spending, saving, and paying down debt. Then on the 17th, we're going to be covering the basics of investing. Joining us in this essential conversation are Julie Markston, a workplace financial consultant based in California, and Neanda Julot, also a workplace financial consultant, but she's based in Chicago. And for the record, the Power Red was not planned, but I do think it works. Now, in the spirit of back to school, we wanted to take a step back and reacquaint ourselves with the basics. So as I said earlier, we put together a mini two-part series. Now, whether you're starting fresh or just want to take a minute to refocus, our hope is that you leave this series feeling more confident and excited about your next financial step. Today, for the first session, we'll talk about how to grow your savings and pay down your debt simultaneously. We have 8 steps to share with you all, and a few other tips and tricks that can help you organize your financial priorities. Now, if you're anything like me, I like to write everything down, so make it easier on yourself. You can always download the slides and use them as a checklist. And again, next week is all about investing, so be sure that you register for that one too. Okay, we have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Julie, with so many competing priorities, how can we know what to focus on first? Tell us our first step.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Well, first, I have to say, I absolutely love back to school. It's one of my favorite times of year. Gives me a similar feeling as New Year's, a fresh start and a new beginning. So we're being pulled in so many different directions: credit cards, car payments, mortgages, student loans, healthcare expenses, just life. It can feel overwhelming and stressful, especially if you're not sure how to best focus your attention. Luckily, though, today we have a few steps to share with you all that will hopefully take some of the confusion out of the process as you work towards your goals and clarify where you can put your next dollar. The first step is to take actually a step backward and to look at the big picture. As my mom always says, you got to look for the forest through the trees. We want to get organized. I understand this may seem a little bit basic. It can be a bit of a tedious exercise, but it's so important to know what we have and where it's going. There's something that I share with clients and participants that I speak with day in and day out. It's called the 4-quadrant exercise. So you can fold a piece of paper or just take a piece of paper and make 4 quadrants or 4 rectangles on that piece of paper. And I want you to label each quadrant. The quadrants are labeled as owe, own, earn, spend. So you want to know what you owe, own, earn, and spend. When we look at the O category, what we're talking about is what are our debts? What are the liabilities on our balance sheet? What are the loans that we're still paying down, or the mortgage or the car payments? Listing those out along with the interest rates associated with what we owe and also the balances that you have left. Knowing what you own. This is the assets part of the balance sheet. What are your real assets? What are your accounts? What are the collectibles that you have? What are you earning? What sort of earned income are you bringing in? Salary, wages, tips, any passive income that you may have come in. And of course, we need to know what the outflows are. What do you spend on a monthly basis? We highly encourage people to categorize their expenses between fixed or essential expenses, as well as any discretionary items. Your fixed expenses are going to be those things like, the mortgage and the insurance payments, food, and things like that. More of the discretionary items could be things like vacation, travel, going out to eat. Highly recommend trying our debt management worksheet too. This is a great way to help you delineate all of the items that are in the O category.
And Fidelity actually has a great tool to help you do this. It's called Full View, and you can input all of your information digitally and use that as a baseline moving forward. And so what do I mean by this? You can actually add your accounts, even the ones held outside of Fidelity, and you'll be able to see your entire financial picture in one place. Once you fill out that information, you'll have access to budgeting tools, debt management dashboards, and so much more. Now, Neanda, how do we know how much we should be spending or budgeting for in each of those quadrants that Julie was talking about before?
Of course, hello everyone, and hello beautiful Women Talk Money community. We'll definitely talk about a guideline to share with you on spending and budgeting, but first and foremost, we want to acknowledge that everyone's situation is different. Costs can vary depending on where you are living, right? So these are strictly guidelines, and we want to make sure you give yourself grace, have milestones along the way. That is okay, and we celebrate that. Now, in terms of the guideline, we want to share with you today our 50-15-5 guideline. And we're going to break this down for you in 3 parts that you see here on the screen. The 50% part is really thinking about keeping your budget for essential expenses to no more than 50% of your pre-tax income. So think of these as your must-haves, your 4 walls. I like to think of it as the things that help me sleep at night, right? We're judgment-free on whatever gets on that list, whatever is essential for you. The 15% part of this guideline is we suggest allocating 15% of your income to your retirement savings. That includes your workplace plans like 401ks, 403bs, or IRAs. And bonus, this 15% number also includes your employer match if that is offered to you. On to the 5% piece of the puzzle here. We suggest allocating 5% of your income to short-term savings, AKA your emergency savings. And I love this part because it's not a matter of if an emergency will happen, but when. So having something in place, an account that's funded to prepare for that rainy day, that hurricane, that monsoon, whatever you want to call it, is golden. And not only that, that account is intended to be used for emergencies. So don't be afraid to use it. I have folks that are scared to pull from it. An emergency happens, use it. Every account has a job. And then this 50-15-5, the 5 piece allows you to have a plan in place to replenish it. And not only that, as you can see, the 50-15-5 doesn't equal 100%. That's intentional. We want to give you all wiggle room, grace, room that for that 30% to be your want to haves. What do you enjoy doing? What is your fun money going to be allocated for, right? We definitely want to make room in our budget for that to address our desires.
And we do love a framework, but you're so right, Neandra. It's just that, a framework. For example, if your situation doesn't allow you to save 15% for retirement right now, that's okay. Start where you can. And like you said, we're here to help you. Let's keep going with that thought for a second. The framework is a great goal, right? But where should someone start if they're finding it difficult to fit into that framework and feel like they may not have enough to do everything? Julie, can you take this one?
Yes, absolutely. We want to make sure that we're protecting the credit score. What is the credit score? Your credit score is a 3-digit number that estimates the likelihood you are to repay a loan in full and on time. Your credit score is derived from a number of different items such as payment history, debt utilization, length of credit history, again, just to name a few. When we think of your credit score, think about the O quadrant that I mentioned when we got started today. The debts in your O quadrant directly impact your credit score. So step 3 is to make sure that you're making all of your minimum payments. This goes without saying, but missed payments can lead to late fees and compounding interest charges. This can cause debt to spiral out of control. If you have trouble staying on top of bill dates, you can consider a few things. Number 1, enroll in auto pay. That way you can make your payments on time automatically. And I would say with most anything financial related, whether it's paying down debt, saving, investing, anytime that you can automate those things, you are more likely to hold yourself accountable. Register for billing alerts. This can act as a reminder before your payment is due. Or, of course, create your own DIY reminder system, either in your calendar, making sure your bill emails stay at the top of your inbox until you pay them. I, for one, put reminders on my phone all the time, just letting me know I've got a bill that I need to pay.
That's a great call out. Maybe we can't do everything right now. The least we can do is make our minimum payments and make them on time. And we can still call this a big win. Neanda, after making sure we're making all of our minimum payments, what can we do next? What's our step 4?
Of course, on to step 4, we're making sure we get all our steps in today. Once we do our minimum payment obligation, it's time to build that rainy day fund, right? Build those reserves. So we're talking about that 5% category that I shared earlier today. So we suggest aiming to reach an initial cash buffer of $1,000, or I would even take it a step further and think about whatever your rent or housing payment is. Now I know where I live, it is not $1,000, right? So I'm aiming for more for that initial cash buffer, but you're doing whatever you can, right? Turning the dial up or down as you see fit. And then once you get to that point, let's ensure that it's not a lump sum that you're doing, right? Maybe you have to progress along the way, and that's okay, right? That's what that 5% is there, or if it has to be less, because that's what you can manage, that's okay too. I'm all about baby steps and milestones to these guidelines, because when a baby first takes its first steps, right, his or her first steps, we celebrate that. That's monumental. Baby steps should be monumental for us as well, and that should signify progress.
That's so smart because you don't know when something is going to come up, like car trouble or an unexpected medical bill. Having a little cash set aside can help make sure that your bills are paid on time and ultimately that you protect that credit score Julie was talking about earlier. So, Julie, our minimum payments are being paid, and now we have a little cash buffer. What can we turn our attention to next?
So we're going to switch gears slightly to talk about the 15% category of retirement that Neonda had mentioned with the 50-15-5 rule. So this step number 5, may not apply to everyone. However, if you have an employer-sponsored retirement plan, such as a 401k or a 403b, it is time to make sure you're contributing enough to capture your employer match. An employer's match is essentially free money. So not taking advantage of it is like leaving money on the table. We do not want you to do that. With that being said, you want to look into whether your employer's contributions take time to vest, and think about whether you'll stay at the job long enough for them to fully vest before you start banking on that free money. Vesting, just so everyone knows, is a term that's used that corresponds to what your employer contributes. And vesting corresponds to how much you have officially earned of your employer's contributions towards your retirement. A lot of times you can see companies or organizations will offer a 3-year cliff vesting. You have to be there a minimum of 3 years to get the match, or 5 years. So look into that with your employer just to confirm how long does it take to vest or earn the dollars that they've contributed on your behalf. Also, a last note. A lot of employers offer a 1% auto increase program. This is where your contributions would automatically increase by 1% each year. You can put a max on it. So for example, let's say right now you're contributing 5% and you know you want to get to 10%. You can opt into this program until you reach 10% over the next few years. It's simple, it's easy to do. You probably won't even notice the extra 1% coming out of your paycheck. But that small amount coming out of your paycheck can make a very big difference in the future. There's power in small amounts, and we have a power of small amounts tool here at Fidelity that you can use to visualize your unique situation just by increasing your contribution rate by 1% towards retirement each year. This tool is called the Power of Small Amounts tool.
I love that, Julie. I think when we talk about numbers and percentages, it almost doesn't sound real. So 1% of $1,000 is $10. That means that if you make $1,000 per paycheck, when you increase your contributions by 1%, you will be contributing an additional $10. Does that make you feel differently about that 1%? It may be small, but to Julie's point, it can be powerful. That 1% is mighty and can potentially change your future. Now, I'm looking through the chat. So before we move on, I want to be balanced. I'm seeing some questions about, hey, what do I do if I don't have an employer retirement plan? Neandra, what can someone do in this step if an employer retirement plan isn't an option?
Yes, we want to have options for everyone here. So in that case, you would consider contributing consistently to an IRA that is a Roth or a traditional IRA. And if you need help deciding on which one might be right for you, we're here for you as well. You can definitely take a look at our options there and a tool and resource to help you in that decision. Just like you opt, if you have an employer plan, to have that happen automatically and consistently, we're saying that can also be the case for an IRA. You can set that up to go weekly, monthly, or whatever works for you. Because if you're anything like me, there were 100 things going on. Sometimes our plates are full, right? So whatever we can do to simplify and automate our finances and help us have one less thing to think about is amazing. And not only do we want to have that sleep at night, we want to sleep peacefully at night, right? So simplifying finances, automating these contributions is great. If you're not sure what type, right, there's also a Fidelity IRA contribution calculator that can help you think about what you might be contributing. But with these IRAs and with retirement planning as a specific rule of thumb, there are maximums, there are limits, right? And in terms of the IRAs, traditional IRAs, generally speaking, pre-tax contributions, they go in before they're taxed. And then when they come out, your contributions and your earnings are taxed upon withdrawals. With Roth IRAs, you've already taxed your contributions. They're going in after tax. And then as long as you follow the rules upon withdrawals, everything comes out tax-free, including your earnings. We have a great article that we're going to share with you that is entitled 7 Commonly Overlooked Facts About IRAs. I love them because there's surprise fun facts about IRAs, such as a spousal IRA. If there's a spouse not earning wages, they can open one provided the other spouse is working and they file jointly. There's IRAs for those who are self-employed and freelancers, and even a Roth IRA for kids. So definitely check out that article for fun facts. Yes, I said the word fun and IRAs in the same sentence. So definitely take a look at that. And an important call out to IRAs, putting the money in the IRA and contributing is the first step, right? Beyond that, it's investing, right? Getting that money to work harder than you do, as we say here on Women Talk Money. So it's important to think about that. And also, again, as you have milestones toward these guidelines that we're sharing with you, and you can bump things up along the way. So you could consider increasing your contributions, right? As you build that momentum towards your retirement.
Absolutely. And saving for your future is so important. So even if you have a workplace retirement account and you want to save in an IRA, you can absolutely do that. Again, saving for your future is so important, especially for us women, because we deal with a lot of different factors, like potentially the pay gap or the fact that we're more likely to take a break from our careers for caregiving duties. And still, after all of that, we tend to pay and put ourselves last. So make sure that if you are able to, that you're saving anywhere and everywhere that you can. So Julie, you know what's coming. We're on step 6. Can you let us know what's next on our to-do list?
Yes, thank you, Alex. So we're at the point that if you're carrying balances on any credit cards, to start chipping away at those by paying more than your minimum monthly payment. If you don't have any outstanding credit card debt and you pay your balances monthly, go ahead and skip number 6 and move on to number 7. But eliminating credit card debt is so important so that you don't get stuck in the high interest rate cycle. I tell folks a lot of times, in our life, we have different types of debt, right? And I characterize debt like cholesterol. We have our good cholesterol and our bad cholesterol. Credit card debt and carrying those balances month over month, it's like the bad cholesterol. That's what we want to try and diminish and lower. If you have balances on more than one card, there's 2 common strategies to tackle this. The 2 common strategies are the snowball and the avalanche method. With the snowball method to paying down credit card debt, you start by paying extra on the credit card with the smallest balance until it's paid off. Then move on to the card with the next smallest balance and pay the minimum plus the amount that you were paying on the first card. Continue this method until all of your cards are paid off. The snowball method, the benefit to this is that it really helps build momentum, and it's very satisfying to see zero balances and cross cards off of your to-do list. On the other hand, the avalanche method, you start by paying extra on the card with the highest interest rate until it's paid off. Once that's paid off, you move on to the next card with the next highest interest rate, making the minimum payment plus the amount that you were paying on the first card, and continue this approach until all of your cards are paid off. The benefit to the avalanche method is that you may save money on interest, especially if your cards have a very wide range of interest rates. We have seen that in the last few years where credit card rates of interest are astronomically high, some of them nearing or even meeting 30%. Once your cards are paid off, if you continue to use them, make sure to start paying your balance in full every month. We want to try and avoid that interest rate charge and that interest rate cycle and any potential late or missed payment fees. Not saying not to use credit cards. I know that I do, but we don't want the interest rate cycle to get the best of us.
Thank you for covering those, Julie. I know that I've used the snowball method in the past and it works. Now, looking through the chat, we're also getting a couple questions and comments around not being able to pay credit card bills. Neanda, if you're in a situation where you're unable to pay your credit card bill and it's due, is there anything we can do?
Yes, for sure. We want to reassure you and have a conversation around this topic because sometimes it's what can be done, right? It feels overwhelming. So I know that missing credit card payments is a major strain on your finances and can increase a lot of stress, right? So stop using the card is our first recommendation, right? If possible, leaving it at home, unlinking it from your digital wallet. I believe it was on another Women Talk Money webinar with one of my colleagues shared putting their credit card in the freezer and them having to defrost it. And in that defrosting time, that was the time that they reflected upon, do they really need to put it on their credit card or not, right? Whatever you have to do to strategically keep that distance from you and the card, right? And then you want to try to call your credit card issuer, right? Sometimes we might think that, hey, this is it. This is what I have to deal with. But the power that we have, the power to use our voice, call them up, tell them about your situation, see if you could possibly negotiate a lower interest rate, even from a time period. They may say no, but at least you tried and used your voice, right? The power in that. Not only that, but you could also consider exploring credit counseling. And we do want to make sure you know that if you are speaking to or need to speak to a credit counselor, that relationship will not impact your credit score. It does not mean you're filing for bankruptcy. What it is a conversation around the best options in terms of debt relief. So we want to make that clear. You can find reputable credit counseling programs through the Department of Justice U.S. Trustee Program, which features a searchable database of credit counselors. Another option to consider is transferring your balance to a 0% credit card, right? So consolidating that debt for a single payment and ideally lower interest payments, maybe 0% promotional offer. Now it's important with this strategy to understand the terms and conditions, the fees, all of the fine print. Ask the credit card company 100 questions if you need to, so you're clear if you decide to go this route.
I actually want to jump in here before we get back to the steps. Julie, I have a follow-up question on what Neanda just said, and then we can get back to step 6. What if the situation isn't as temporary as we'd like, and we're not sure when we're going to be able to pay our credit card bill? What can someone do in that situation?
Well, first and foremost, I think we as women try to tackle everything and take everything on ourselves. I want to tell everyone it is okay to ask for help and it's encouraged. Finances in general can be extremely difficult to navigate. Consider working with a financial professional so that you have an established relationship in both the good times and the bad times. There is a green button, and I think Alex had already mentioned it, but if you click on that green button here in today's webinar, I think it's at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Fill out some personal information. A Fidelity financial professional can and will reach out to you to help walk you through your unique situation, so highly encouraged. But going back to your initial question, what can you do if you can't pay your credit card bills? First, call your card issuer. They may be willing to negotiate with you. Ask for relief options. If you suspect that you're going to need more than just one waived fee, ask your creditor for more relief options. Could be something as lower minimum payment or even a lower interest rate for a few months until your financial situation stabilizes. Perhaps explore a hardship forbearance program. Your credit card issuer may also provide this program to briefly pause payments in the event of a financial setback. Maybe negotiate a repayment or a debt settlement plan. This you can negotiate yourself or with the help of a debt counselor or an attorney. And I think the big thing to take away from these ideas is that it never hurts to just ask. You won't know what options are out there for you unless you take the time to do the research and to ask for help. It's absolutely okay.
I want to thank you both for sharing this information. And I totally agree. Working with a financial professional can offer a sense of relief, and it can take some of the guesswork out of what to do next. Definitely click on that green button if you have questions. So let's get back on track with our steps here. I think we're on 7. So Neanda, once our credit cards are all sorted out, if needed, what's next?
Yes, remember the cash buffer we've been talking about throughout this webinar. Now it's time to fully fund this emergency savings account. It's go time, right? So we want to share with you all an article about how to save for emergencies. And not only that, what kind of account should you consider to hold this emergency money in, right? For this step, we say aim to save at least 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses. And a common question I get from clients is, where should I be in that 3 to 6 month range? First and foremost, as always, is your comfort level. But you can think about factors such as, do you work in an industry? If you lose your job, it might be hard for you to pick up another one, right? So maybe you're on the 6 month, closer to the 6 month range. So factors such as that for your personal situation is what you consider. But when your goal, again, as you inch and progress toward that 3 to 6 months, we're talking sleep in the seminar, sleeping peacefully at night. That is what is meant to do to make you feel like you are covered when emergencies come up. All right, we want to make sure that money is also easily accessible, right? Keeping it in cash, not, and earning interest, right? We want to earn as much interest as we can along the way, right? High interest savings account, you could consider money market funds, things that could provide that interest, but we don't want this money invested for there to be ups and downs, right? So easily accessible, and it may feel like a lot to keep it in cash, but remember, this is your safety net. This is your I'm going to sleep amazing tonight money. That's what it's there for, to be there if there's a life curveball that comes along your way.
We are flying through this checklist. So credit cards are square, our emergency savings is fully funded. I think this is also a good spot to bring up a few of the questions from the chat that we actually see quite often. Should someone focus on paying down all of their debt or switch gears and contribute more to saving? Julie, with that in mind, can you take us through our last step?
Yes, I can't believe we're at the last step. Wow, we have blown by through this. The good news is you now have many of your most pressing financial needs covered. So you can start moving down your priority list. This may be where decisions start to get a little bit more complex for you and your situation. So if you still have debt, that could be student loans, an auto loan, home equity, a mortgage. Try comparing the interest rate on your debt to our rule of 6%. What is the rule of 6%? Generally speaking, Fidelity encourages you to focus on paying off debts that have an interest rate of 6% or greater before any additional investing. On the flip side, if the rate of interest on any particular debt is less than 6%, probably makes sense to make the minimum payments and invest simultaneously. That 6% rule can help you decide whether your next priority should be paying more than the minimum on remaining debts or investing additional unmatched dollars toward retirement or other goals. If you do have student loans or a mortgage, also make sure that you're taking advantage of maybe any tax deductions that you could be eligible for on the interest that you pay. Explore any employer benefit programs like student loan relief, or maybe if you work in the public sector, you'll qualify for public service loan forgiveness. As we mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that you are aiming to save that 15% of your income towards retirement each year. Keep in mind that does include what the employer is contributing on your behalf. That 15% doesn't all fall on you. But just know that this is something that we are aiming for, is that 15%. So a guideline on how much to save for retirement, maybe during step 4, if we go back, you were only contributing enough to get your employer match. Now it's time to try and hit that full 15% mark before you continue down your priority list. And if you're already hitting that 15%, amazing. Consider saving even more, perhaps maxing out your contributions to your employer plan to the IRS limit, or opening a supplemental IRA to potentially save more. It's really about striking that balance between paying off debt, saving and investing. And I think that 6% rule of thumb really helps give you an idea of what you should be prioritizing.
I appreciate you sharing that, Julie. I agree. We're continuing up the ladder of financial wellness. And with our steps, the decisions as we get higher and higher up the ladder can be a little more complex. While we're climbing the ladder, I want to make sure we also take a moment to look down the ladder and see how far we've climbed. Because a lot of us, especially as women, are go, go, go on to the next, myself included. So maybe we add another square on the quadrant of what we've accomplished so far, what we're celebrating, what we're proud of. So I want to make sure we make room for that as well. As we've said a few times today, if you aren't already working with a financial professional, this is the time to consider bringing in some help, right? Definitely leaning on someone who can help you not only identify and prioritize your goal. Sometimes we may need to reprioritize our goals, right? Things come up, life happens, right? Having someone to lean on is critical, right? Having that financial professional that could maybe serve as an accountability partner, someone who collaborates with you and works with you, right? Not speaking at you, but collaborating with you and providing that outside reassurance that you're on the right track.
Yeah, I have to agree, Neandra. I would say everyone can benefit from working with a financial professional, no matter what step you're on, because everybody has their expertise. We rely on different people for different things, a builder for a house, a doctor if you're sick. So establishing a relationship with a financial professional is no different. So now that we have our to-do list prioritized, let's expand. Julie, what can we do if we feel tight on cash each month and someone is trying to work through this prioritized list, but may not have enough or is looking for a little more?
So it is 2025. There are side hustles everywhere you look, and potentially something for everyone. We have a few, 20, to mention side hustle ideas that could bring in some extra cash. I won't go over all 20, but something that you could consider: selling your old stuff. Thrifting can be lucrative. Perhaps you have clothing or shoes or handbags that you're just not utilizing anymore. So you could try selling some of that online. Believe it or not, cleaning, that's actually my love language. I love to clean. I'd be happy to clean someone's house. That could be another side hustle. Delivering food, or driving for one of the rideshare apps. Proofreading, editing resumes. Hey, becoming a TV or a movie extra. I live in the West Coast, near a very big metropolitan city where media is king. And so, that's very common. I have a lot of friends that just serve as extras in commercials. I think the thing with a side hustle is you want to think about what you're already good at so that you don't have to invest a lot of time learning something new. You shouldn't have to get a PhD for your side hustle. Consider what you just enjoy doing and what you're really good at. Even if you are good at something, but you don't enjoy doing it for yourself, odds are you probably won't like doing it for others either. And I think the thing with the side hustle is the juice should be worth the squeeze. Account for what people are willing to pay for in your area, upfront and ongoing costs. Before you embark on that side hustle, you want to have a good idea of the level of effort investment that's going to lead to a big enough reward. And once you find that gig, market yourself. Tell your friends and family that you're looking for clients. Maybe post in a local social media group as well.
That's great, Julie. Thank you for sharing that. We also know that not everyone will be able to take a side hustle. So Neanda, do you have any other tips for someone wanting to save more money, may not have much left over to save, and may also not have the opportunity to necessarily make any more right now?
Yes, because as the long list of side hustles, does exist. Many of us may not have the time, right, to do the extras. So where can we look at our budget? Where can we adjust things in our life? And we have a million things to do. And remember, I'm the one who is encouraging that amazing sleep, right? So we want to share with you all an article that I love that's 10 ways to cut your expenses by 10%. There are a few pointers that I even know by heart in that article where it says, embrace the art of negotiation, something we spoke to earlier. Use your voice, talk to your credit card issuers, talk to your utility companies. Can you negotiate rates? There is something in there, embracing your inner chef. What's your passion? What are you already good at, right? Doing that, maybe being that chef instead of going out to eat, like things like that you could think about, and that article will share and give you some ideas. Because it's more than saving, obviously investing, but how do we minimize expenses? That can also amplify our financial picture, right? Everyone's situation is different. So their money saving mindset, right? Needing more money. We want to also think of this as abundance, right? It's not restriction, but how can we think outside of the box to minimize expenses in our life, right? We can even be reflecting on the quadrants that Julie shared earlier, and we're seeing our money is going places that isn't aligned with our life anymore. It's not reflecting our values. So definitely take a look at that article. Take a look at some of the things I shared with you today, and let's put it in perspectives. Again, the power of small amounts. Sometimes speaking in big numbers can be overwhelming and unattainable. But if we save $14 a day, right? Just $14 a day. That's what? I don't even know if that's lunch, right? In some parts of the country, you can add an extra $5,000 to your bank account by the end of the year, and potentially, again, amplifying your saving and investing for that money if that's a goal.
Neanda, what a perfect segue for next week's events, which again is titled What You Should Know About Investing. So please join us on the 17th for a deeper dive into how to get started investing, or if you're already investing, what can you do to level up? Julie, Neandra, I want to ask one more question before we wrap today up. If you had one takeaway to share with our audience today, what would it be? Julie, let's start with you.
Power in small amounts. I love taking bite-sized pieces and showing the impact that it's going to have on the long run. I tell people this all the time. If you just start saving a little bit right now, in 30, 40 years, you're going to be astounded at the amount of compound growth. Again, there is so much power in that.
Thank you for that, Julie. And Neandra?
I would say baby steps are monumental, right? The little bit, the incremental progress that we make, acknowledging that, right? And having that motivate us. I think we need to embrace and give ourselves grace, and celebrate those milestones along the way.
Absolutely. For me, it was about automation, whether we're trying to make sure that our bills are paid on time or that we're saving at a regular interval. Make sure that you automate whatever it is that you're trying to do. That way, when life gets in the way, we don't forget those important steps as well. So, Julie, Neanda, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting with me and for all of the great information that you've shared today. We're also going to have a slide, I think it just went up, that's going to have all of our upcoming events and to remind you on how you can get help. And to all of you watching, thank you for joining. We'll hopefully see you again on the 17th. We hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time today to join us for Market Sense. I'm Heather Hedges with Fidelity. So as we are coming on the air to you right now, lawmakers in Washington have been unable to reach an agreement to avoid a government shutdown, which is creating some uncertainty in the markets. Just a reminder, the deadline to reach a deal is tonight. So it's hours away at midnight. And it could impact some critical economic data that our team is going to be talking about today that's set to come out at the end of the week. So I can think of nobody better today to join us to break this all down for us than Alice Joe, who is a senior vice president and CFA here at Fidelity. Alice is on our government relations team down in Washington, D.C., and she's going to be getting us up to speed on the very latest negotiations happening behind the scenes. And then we're also going to broaden the discussion for you today with the lens towards investing. And we've asked Alice to share some of the other policy headwinds and tailwinds coming out of Washington at the moment that may have the potential to impact the markets in the future. And from Washington to Wall Street, today is the last day of the third quarter. Hard to believe September is over, and quarter three is poised to end on a strong note for stocks, with the S&P up more than 13% year to date. But we did get some new data points showing consumer confidence is weakening, with job market concerns and inflation remaining tame but sticky. So we're going to get into all of that today with Jurrien Timmer, of course, Fidelity's Director of Global Macro, who is joining us today from just across the pond in London. And a big thank you to both of you, Jurrien and Alice, for making the time. Well, I know right now we are all watching and monitoring the situation very closely.
Yeah, happy to be here, Heather.
Yes, good evening to both of you from London.
Good evening to you, Jurrien. Good day to you, Alice. And as I said, today is Tuesday, September 30th, the last day of the third quarter. You know, Jurrien, in general, we've continued to see a bullish streak since the Fed cut rates by a quarter percentage point. The market continues to reach new highs, but we have this government shutdown looming now. We've got tariffs still in play. We have that jobs data showing the jobs market is softening, Jurrien. We're going to be talking to Alice about all of those factors in just a minute. But first of all, I wanted to ask you, Jurrien, what do you think is happening here? Do you think all of these worries at some point could weigh on the market, or do you think this bull market's going to keep going?
Well, there's a very, very old saying on Wall Street that the market likes to climb the wall of worry. And that certainly has been the case for some time now. And so with the third quarter coming to a close, this bull market, which started in October of 2022, is about to reach its 3-year anniversary or birthday. And of course, the shutdown is always, something that's on everyone's mind. And but remember, markets are what we call long duration assets, right? So it's a market of stocks. It's not a stock market. And the stocks that are in the market, the big ones that are driving the market, are benefiting from very strong fundamentals, strong earnings growth. There is some pretty strong renewed momentum on the earnings front, and we'll get earnings season in a couple of weeks. And so the market has been riding that wave. And of course, we've had the tariffs and now we have the shutdown, but we also have the big, beautiful bill, which has created quite a capital spending boom. And of course, we have the whole AI story, which, sometimes is hard to define, but we know it's very, very powerful. And so all of these things together, in addition to a bond market that's been very, very quiet, the 10-year yield is around 4.15%, and a Fed that recently started cutting rates again. That's fuel to the fire for the bullish sentiment. And so strong earnings with low interest rates is a pretty good combination. So again, markets are a long duration asset, and I think if you're wondering why isn't the market reacting more strongly to the prospect of a shutdown later today, it's because the markets are focused on those fundamentals, which is not to say that the shutdown can't have an effect, but I think the initial response is to let's focus on earnings and interest rates and go from there.
Markets still focus on the fundamentals, and it's a market of stocks. I like that, Jurrien. I like to think of it that way too. All right, Alice, let's bring it in here and talk about this looming government shutdown. So as I mentioned, Congress has until midnight tonight to reach a deal or pass a continuing resolution. You probably hear people talk about CRs, a continuing resolution, and that's a temporary funding measure that allows the government to continue operations. As Jurrien likes to say, Alice, we've seen this movie before, right? But I was hoping you could talk about the major sticking points this time around, if you see anything different this time around, and whether you foresee a deal happening anytime soon, because the last we heard from both sides of the aisle, which was last night after a White House press conference, a White House meeting, rather, they seem pretty far apart, both sides. So how do you see this playing out at this point?
Yeah, I mean, Heather, there's certainly hasn't been a lack of drama in Washington over government funding. And as you mentioned yesterday, the president and congressional leaders on both sides of the aisle met, but they walked away with no agreement to avoid the shutdown that's coming. Negotiations really, they've been a stalemate as Republicans have been speaking a 7-week extension of the current government funding, as you mentioned, It's also called the continuing resolution. But at the same time, Democrats have been demanding that any government funding include extensions of the Affordable Care Act premium tax credit enhancements that are set to expire at the end of this year. They're also asking for a complete rollback of the changes to Medicaid that was made in the One Big Beautiful Bill that Republicans pushed through just a few months ago. Now, if they were to include these requests from Democrats, it would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1 trillion. So it's pretty hefty there. Clearly, Republicans aren't yielding to their demands, and Democrats, as of this morning, have yet to come back with a less costly proposal or one that's perhaps Republicans can support. I think one driving factor to keep in mind with the debate right now is that Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, he faced quite a bit of backlash from his party when he sided with Republicans at the very last minute to keep the government open back in March when we had this debate back then. So given that he's facing some pretty strong political pressure to extract something from Republicans this go around, even if it means shutting down the federal government for a short period. Obviously, we're about 10 hours away from the midnight deadline, and it becomes dire by the minute. I will say that the Senate is set to vote once again on the House passed the House passed continuing resolution today, but it's expected to fail. And Senate Republicans are planning to bring the continuing resolution up for a vote every day during the shutdown to put pressure on Democrats. But I will say Democrats, they're dug in, at least for right now. I think what's different this time from previous funding fights is that there's no real clear exit ramp or alternative. So I think this shutdown could last for a while. I will say, though, that we are starting to see some cracks from a few in the Democratic Party, but they're trying to find a way to avoid the shutdown, but the numbers aren't quite there yet to change the trajectory of where this is headed.
And the numbers aren't quite there yet, just to remind folks out there at home, because Republicans have the majority on both sides of Congress, right? So that's part of the pressure that Minority Leader Schumer is feeling right now, I'm sure. So let's talk about what happens if at midnight tonight, Alice, they fail to reach a deal. Can you remind us what services are affected during a government shutdown and what this means for you and me and potentially for the economy as well?
Yeah, and typically in a government shutdown, every federal agency that gets appropriations from Congress has to shut down. But there are some essential services that focus on national security, law enforcement, air safety. Those services will remain available to Americans. So things like the military, which did get an extra boost from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, as well as law enforcement will still be in place. Air traffic controllers will still be working, as will TSA agents. So if you're traveling, those services will still be available. Emergency medical care and some public health emergency responses will still be operating. There are some mandatory programs. So these are programs that aren't funded by Congress through the appropriations process. They're funded through other means, but those programs aren't subject to the appropriations and therefore will continue. So what does that mean? That basically means that Social Security payments, SNAP benefits will continue to be distributed. You'll see Medicare and Medicaid programs continue to operate, and unemployment compensation will continue to be paid. Generally, government employees are not paid during the shutdown, but they will automatically receive back pay for the period that they are either furloughed or as if they're working in an essential service. There will be some that work without pay, but they will be paid back once funding is restored. Now, the question is, why does this matter to investors? Well, those employees that are furloughed long-term could affect the gathering of critical economic data. I know that's important for this show. Speaking of the data, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're the agency that releases the monthly jobs reports. They will cease operations according to a Department of Labor shutdown plan that was put into place just yesterday. And this, of course, could complicate some decision making for the Federal Reserve, who does rely on some of that data.
So, Yuri, and that important jobs data would be delayed. Any thoughts on the potential impact there?
Yeah, so I would say for the markets, the delay of economic data of course, is highly relevant. It's relevant for policymakers as well, like the Federal Reserve. Um, and so, that is one of the direct consequences of a shutdown. It makes, our lives, I wouldn't say it makes it more difficult, but, when you have times where economic data are very relevant, and for instance, the jobs data, we've been talking about that for a few shows now, the jobs data have been softening. And so, we're all kind of wondering whether that softening turns into something more. So this will delay it. But again, those data will get released when the government reopens again. But it's definitely one of the clearer consequences of a shutdown for the financial markets beyond any economic impact.
And let's talk a little bit further with you, Jurrien, for a moment about what history tells us about the impact of government shutdowns on the stock market. So we've had 10 official government shutdowns since 1980. From a historical lens, do you think this is something that investors should be concerned about?
Long-term investors should not, in my view, just because I mean you can almost think of a government shutdown like a storm or like a hurricane, like that sort of temporarily slows down economic activity, but then it gets cleaned up and it's back to business. And every other shutdown historically has had that effect. Like the economy has to run, the government has to run. So some of this is, political, scoring political points and things like that, as Alice mentioned. So the market generally looks through this because these are short-term disruptions, if you will. But as long as they don't affect long-term drivers for the stock market, earnings, interest rates, then the market really does look through it most of the time. And even like when we had one like in 2018 where the market was down, and you can see that in the blue line, the market was not down for that reason. The market was down for other reasons, and it happened to rebound right around that time, but it was not because of the shutdown. So generally the market has bigger fish to fry. I hate to put it in such blunt terms, but corporate earnings, interest rates, the state of the economy, the state of the consumer, the jobs market, those are the things that the markets are mostly focused on.
Market has bigger fish to fry, and historically speaking, the market generally rises after government shutdowns are over, correct?
Well, the market generally rises anyway, not always, but it rises, 60, 70% of the time. And the market doesn't like uncertainty, right? So the shutdown does create some temporary uncertainty. And once that uncertainty passes, the market can kind of go back to its business as usual. So generally, if the shutdown is resolved, the market can say, okay, fine, let's move on, and it goes back to business.
What about the bond market? Let's talk about that, though, too, Jurrien. I think sometimes it's easy for folks to conflate government shutdowns and deficits. They're two different things here, and I think that's really important that we make that distinction on this show today as we try to educate everybody watching and listening. We know that bonds are connected to deficits, but is there a direct impact with the bond market and government shutdowns?
Yes, so that's a very good question, and this is an important thing to highlight because shutdowns and these debt ceiling cliffs that pop up from time to time, they kind of feel similar, right? It's like political drama, and it's like threats and this and that, and then a deal is made to either lift the debt ceiling or reopen the government. And they are two different things. And one thing that's important to note is that when we have a debt ceiling cliff, if you will, the ability to issue debt, of course, is impacted. And if you can't issue debt, you can't spend money. And so they're related in that sense. But for the shutdown that we're presumably about to have, interest payments on the debt are not affected. So that's one of the exemptions, as Alice mentioned earlier. And so there is no risk that the government will default on its debt. And we call that a technical default because it's not like, it's not a real default, but like an interest payment could be missed when you have a debt ceiling, showdown. But for the shutdown, there will be no interruptions in interest on the debt. And so there is no fiscal risk there of the government defaulting or debt getting downgraded. I mean, it could happen, but that's not really what this is about. And again, just coming back to the economic data for a moment in terms of what it means for the bond market. One thing to remember is that, we all want to know what the data is, of course, because this is what we do. But the Fed needs to know what the data is also because it's setting policy. And in that sense, I guess it's good that the Fed just a few weeks ago made a policy change in cutting rates. And it's not hanging on by a thread right now, waiting for the economic data. I mean, it might be, but there's no imminent policy action that otherwise couldn't happen. And that's important at times when policy needs to change rapidly and we're not in one of those times. But if that were the case and all of a sudden you're not getting the data, then you're flying blind. And so that would be a big deal at certain points in the market cycle. But again, today, that's a little bit, on the back burner because no one really expects the Fed to do anything for the next couple of months anyway.
Sure. Yeah, you make a good point there. The timing could certainly be worse. But I do want to bring Alice back in here, Jurriën, since we have her here today to talk about some of the other policies that Alice is watching right now in Washington too, and the ability to impact all the things you and I talk about, Jurriën, the economy, the stock market, corporate America. Tariffs may be a topic that investors quite candidly may be beginning to feel a little bit weary hearing about these days. But the fact of the matter is, as you all well know, they have not gone away. So I was hoping when we have Alice here, Alice, you could walk us through which countries have tariff pauses that are expiring and what's still up in the air that investors might want to pay attention to, that we might want to have on our radar.
Yeah, absolutely. So tariffs, absolutely are still in play with a 10% baseline for all imports for any country. But there are some countries that do have some higher tariff rates, like India, Brazil, South Africa, and many others. One country that we are watching very closely is China. If you recall, back in August, the U.S. and China agreed to a 90-day pause on the higher tariffs that each country imposed on each other. But that pause is set to expire on November 10th. So that's coming up pretty quickly. I think without, further agreements between the two countries, tariffs, of course, on their imports would surge, perhaps into the triple digits, and potentially risk further straining trade relations between the two countries. We're also seeing some new sectoral tariffs being imposed. More recently, President Trump announced a 100% tariff on branded or patented pharmaceutical imports, as well as a 25% tariff on big or heavy trucks and a 50% tariff on kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities. Now, these new tariffs here for the sectors are going to go into effect tomorrow, starting on October 1st. Of course, there's a number of ongoing legal challenges with respect to the tariffs. As we know, the Court of International Trade and the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that President Trump exceeded his authority in imposing reciprocal tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Now, enforcement of those court decisions have been stayed or at least paused to allow time for the Supreme Court to take a look at the case. And right now, oral arguments are scheduled in the Supreme Court for November 5th. So for right now, tariffs are still in place, but that could change depending on, where the Supreme Court comes out or if other countries are successful in negotiating a trade agreement with the U.S.
Hey, Jurriën, how are you thinking about tariffs these days? Just to remind our audience, we saw the markets dip down into correction territory back in April when the president announced the tariffs. It's since, of course, gained it all back and then some. Is this still something investors should be concerned about? How are you thinking about tariffs?
I mean, the tariffs, of course, are real. By our analysis, about 3/4 of them have kind of started to be felt. And most of the impact is coming from the consumer paying higher prices and the companies importing the goods. So there is a cost. The question always is, and one of the frustrations in our work is that it's hard to attribute a single outcome to a single cost because there's always a myriad number of things going on. And so we have the tariffs, which clearly are a cost to someone. I mean, they are an import tax basically, and our data shows that it's mostly paid for by someone in the US, whether a company or a consumer. But on the other hand, we have the one big beautiful bill, and the expense accounting that brought, and the capital spending that has been unleashed as a result of that. And then, of course, we have this whole AI boom that is bigger than probably all of them. And so it's very hard to say, okay, this thing is happening, it's having this impact. So at this point, the market is riding a wave of optimism despite the tariffs. And of course, back in April, when we got that first round of news on April 2nd, the market was pricing in really kind of a worst case scenario. And it's dialed that back because the policy was dialed back, but the tariffs are still happening, and they will extract a cost of some sort, but it's offset by more bullish tailwinds right now.
Are under the category of headwinds to this bull market and beyond, there's also immigration policy and its impact on the labor market, which is something the Fed is watching closely. You had mentioned AI. It could have an impact on that, Jurriën. Alice, I was hoping you could lay out for us which immigration policies you're watching the most closely right now that could have the most impact on business getting done here in the U.S., to Jurriën's point.
Yeah, so obviously with this administration, we've seen a huge shift in terms of how we've addressed immigration policy. And we've seen increased scrutiny for businesses in terms of the audits, intensified I-9 employment eligibility verification, and other things, creating huge administrative burdens, right, and operational disruptions for a lot of business, particularly in those sectors like transportation or agriculture, construction, and the like. And so, this increased enforcement certainly has led to some workforce shortages there in some industries. The one thing I will say is that industries that require more highly skilled workers are also now facing a pretty big challenge, because more recently, the White House put out a proclamation that now imposes a $100,000 fee on any new H-1B visa petition. So H-1B visas are granted to those who are highly skilled, people who are tech workers or physicians that require lots of schooling to be credentialed there. I would note that this $100,000 fee is per petition. So that means it's not per employer. And so if you're a company that employs a lot of H-1B visa workers, then that fine could get pretty hefty there.
Per potential employee, you mean by per petitioner, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
per employee, right. And as I mentioned, this fee targets high skilled workers. So we could see rural areas in hospital that need hospital and healthcare workers see a shortage of physicians. And then, of course, there could be some really huge implications for innovation in America, especially now in the age of AI. You mentioned that we're in an AI race right now. That's going to hit a lot of tech-oriented companies, or those companies that have invested really heavily in technology.
All right, well, I wanted to end things sort of on a positive note, though. If we always try to do that if we can. And I do want to hit on the headwinds to this market too. And you mentioned the one big beautiful bill, Jurriën, as a potential tailwind from a policy perspective. Of course, it's now law, and it comes with a permanent extension of corporate tax breaks, which seems to be a positive development for this bull market. Would you agree with that assessment, Jurriën, that that's a positive development? And how much of a potential tailwind do you see it being?
Yeah, so clearly the expensing of R&D and things like that, the extension of the tax cuts, deregulation, these are all obviously positive things for the market. And then you sprinkle in, some Fed rate cuts, that doesn't hurt either. The bond market is very quiet. It's the 10-year yield's been in a range of 4 to 5% now for a few years, and whenever it kind of gets up to 5%, market starts to get a little nervous, but we're closer to 4%. And so right now, the market's kind of in a sweet spot. Earnings growth is accelerating. Earnings estimates are being revised up. The bond market's quiet and the Fed is cutting rates. And we have, again, this whole AI boom, which, we're kind of wondering, does that boom become a bubble at some point? It doesn't seem to be right now, but there are some pretty strong underpinnings. But of course, not to put to rain on the parade. There is no such thing as a free lunch, of course. And so, if you're getting all of that, the market tends to get pricier, and the valuation side is not an easy nut to crack, because the S&P is trading at about 25 times earnings, and this is where diversification comes in, right? Global markets are now participating, and they are growing earnings now as fast as in the U.S., but at a lower multiple. So, a diversified portfolio is always a good idea, especially right now.
Global bull market. All right. Well, just fantastic insights from both of you today, Urian and Alice. I wanted to say a big thank you to both of you for lending your time and perspective today, with you being overseas, Urian, and everything going on, as Alice and her team and so many teams here at Fidelity continue to monitor all of this in real time. And Alice, as you said, no clear off ramp or exit ramp at this moment. So I know you're going to continue to be around the clock, working with your sources and watching the very latest. And that's why this would be a fantastic time to bookmark fidelity.com/market volatility, where our partners at Fidelity Viewpoints, which is our newsletter here at Fidelity, are constantly updating that market volatility page. We've got an article up there right now with further details on the historical perspective of government shutdowns, what it could or might not mean for the markets. And you'll also find the replay to this show available up there as well if you missed any part of it. On behalf of Urian Timmer and Alice Zhou, thank you so much for your time today. And remember, we're on live every Tuesday at 2 Eastern. You can catch us then with the replay available shortly thereafter, or you can catch us if you're on the go, wherever you get your podcasts. Take care, everybody. And Urian, safe travels to you.
Crypto as an asset class is highly volatile. It's for people with a high tolerance for risk and who understand they can lose the entire value of their investment. Crypto may be more susceptible to market manipulation than securities. It's also not insured by the FDIC or protected by the Securities Investor Protection Corporation. Investors in crypto do not benefit from the same regulatory protections applicable to registered securities like stocks or bonds. Fidelity Crypto is offered by Fidelity Digital Assets. Brokerage accounts and securities trading are provided by Fidelity Brokerage Services, which does not offer crypto as a direct investment or provide trading or custody service for such assets. Throughout this interactive conversation, you'll hear us use words like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many more. We may use terms like crypto or digital assets as substitute words for specific coins, or to talk about the ecosystem as a whole. Just remember, all coins and tokens have very different attributes and use cases, and the ones we talk about here are only part of a wide variety of assets in existence. Hey there, welcome to the Covering Crypto live stream. I'm Jim Armstrong with Fidelity. Choosing the right place to store and secure your cryptocurrency is about way more than just security. It's also about confidence. It's about feeling like you've made the right decision for your investments, feeling like you are confident enough to ask the right questions about where and what to do and what method to use. So that's the point of this entire live stream episode, dedicating the entire conversation to helping you build that crypto confidence when it comes to custody and storage for your digital assets. To get answers to your questions, we are thrilled to have invited back two of our very most favorite live stream guests, Kristen and Ramin. Thank you both for taking time to be with us today. It'd be great if you could just introduce yourselves really quickly, name, title, what you do here at Fidelity. And Kristen, we'll start with you if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim. My name is Kristen, and I work on a team within Fidelity Digital Assets that builds out our crypto help experience for our customers. Our main focus areas are content creation as it relates to Fidelity Crypto Help and mapping the customer journey. My team works to reduce friction and guide our customers through our crypto product offerings. So if you ever have a question about how something works in your Fidelity crypto account, you can find us at fidelity.com/crypto help.
Tremendous resource. So thanks for sharing that right off the bat. And Ramin, how about you?
Hi, yes. My name is Ramin. I'm product strategy lead for Fidelity Digital Assets. So responsible for product roadmap and designing our product offerings, including custody and trading. This includes the Fidelity Crypto experiences and then also the underlying platform that Fidelity Crypto runs on. So things like our wallet and our trading systems.
Very good. And Sydney Wilson is also with us today. She is also on the Fidelity Digital Assets team. She's going to be helping us with our live polls and live Q&A. Hey, Sid.
Hey, Jim. Happy to be here today.
Awesome, Sydney. Thank you. Let's actually start with a question that came into our live chat during a recent episode that we felt like was a really good way to start off today's episode. The question is, where do I store my crypto if you can't touch or feel crypto? Which is a great place to start. It's an intangible asset. How do I store it someplace? And so generally you have two options when it comes to storing your crypto, and then you've got some more decisions to make after that. So I'll recap at a high level what your choices are. First, you can provide your own custody and storage. And this is often just referred to as self-custody. You as the individual can buy or receive or purchase or transfer cryptocurrencies, and then you store them and you protect them in a private wallet. And that wallet can be something physical that you might actually hold in your hand, or it could be an online account. That's self-custody. Your other umbrella of options here has to do with what's called having a custodial account. You might also hear it referred to today as a trusted third-party account. Of your two options, this is generally the more straightforward one, can be the more simple one to do. It's going to be an online wallet that you access using login credentials with whatever provider you've chosen to have custody. And typically it's a crypto exchange where you might have even purchased that crypto, and you'll access that, generally speaking, with a login and password as you might be familiar with. But again, that's a very high level look at your two options. I'll hand it over to our guest now to dive deeper. And Kristen, why don't you start us off, if you could, by talking a little bit more about self-custody, doing it yourself.
Yeah, sure. So self-custody means you have sole control over your crypto. And while this gives you all the control and more privacy, you also take on all of the responsibility. With self-custody wallets, technically what you're actually doing is storing the passwords to access your crypto. Your wallet doesn't actually contain your digital assets. Your wallet holds the keys to those assets. And in terms of what a self-custody wallet is, a wallet is either a hardware wallet or a software wallet. So a hardware wallet is something physical like a USB, and a software wallet is something that you can download onto a device, either your computer or your phone. Now, when you set up your self-custody wallet, a seed phrase will be generated for you. And a seed phrase is that sequence of 12 to 24 words that acts as a master key to access and recover a cryptocurrency wallet should you ever lose access to your wallet due to something like a fire, a theft, or even a boating accident. Now, in the case of a lost or misplaced wallet, a seed phrase allows you to just re-download the software wallet app, or you can go out and purchase another hardware wallet. And when you go to set it up again, instead of generating 12 new words, you can just type in your seed phrase and voila, your wallet will be recovered. This is why it's so important that the only person who should ever have access to your seed phrase is you, because anyone that can access your phrase can access your funds by simply typing in a seed phrase on a new wallet that they have access to and you don't. Tying it back to your wallet doesn't actually contain your digital assets, but rather your wallet holds the keys to those digital assets.
And Ramin, I'd love it if you could give us a high-level look at that third-party custody option. Just noting for the audience that, of course, when we're talking about that topic, we'll generally be talking specifically about Fidelity Crypto as offered by Fidelity Digital Assets, since that's what we all know the most about.
Yeah, perfect. So in the custodial side, it's very similar to how you hold securities with a brokerage account, a brokerage firm like Fidelity. So when you hold digital assets to the custodian is maintaining control and security of assets on your behalf. So they'll take instructions from you on what to do with the assets. Just as an example, you can see in the slide here just what it would look like in Fidelity Crypto. And so as we've talked about, you log in with a username and password. You can see your assets within the account. You kind of interact with them very similar like what you do with a brokerage firm like Fidelity. And here we have the Fidelity Crypto account sitting just next to your other Fidelity accounts. In this case, the secrets and the keys, everything we'll talk about today, those are managed by the custodian. So the custodian will use the private keys to take action on the assets and generally maintain security of those assets on your behalf. And then you will have an account that you can access through your username and password. You don't need to manage all of the keys and kind of all of the crypto specific security protocols yourself.
Excellent. Let's start to dive deeper into all of those options. I know there's a lot of questions about all of them. And so, Kristen, I have a registration question that came in from a registrant named Elizabeth, who said, I've heard the terms hot and cold wallets. How should I think about the differences there? What should I consider? Pretty common question, Kristen, but how do you answer it?
That's a great question, Elizabeth, because it's one I found myself asking when I first got into crypto. First, we'll start by defining what a crypto wallet is in the first place. And you can see that on the slide here. A crypto wallet is just a device or a program that's needed to access your crypto. There are different types of crypto wallets. You've got online accounts or physical paper wallets, and they all have different levels of security and accessibility. So we'll start with a few high-level definitions. When you call a wallet hot, that just means that it's online. A hot wallet is connected to the internet. If it's on your phone, a hot wallet will look like an app. And if it's on the web or computer, you'll see it typically in the form of an extension that needs to be downloaded to your web browser. Now, on the other side is a cold wallet, and a cold wallet is offline. It does not go online.
So that's a great first half of an answer to Elizabeth's question, but the second half is the harder question. How do I figure out which one's right for me?
Which is another great question. So a hot wallet is generally more preferable if you're someone who wants quick and easy access to your crypto. The process of accessing your crypto can feel more seamless with a hot wallet. With more advanced users who might find themselves participating in DeFi activities, which is just an abbreviation for decentralized finance, a hot wallet can be attractive for things like lending, borrowing, yield farming, even staking. That's because you can pick your own fees when you transact to speed up transactions. You can also limit your exposure to financial loss through vulnerabilities like hacks by keeping limited funds on your hot wallet. And all of this while maintaining a sense of privacy. Oftentimes we see hot wallets as the preferred choice for people who like to purchase digital collectibles, those NFTs you hear about or non-fungible tokens, because you typically have to connect to a decentralized application to buy your NFT. And this can be a time when you're more vulnerable to risk, like connecting to a malicious application.
Got it. Okay, now contrast that, if you could, to a cold wallet.
A cold wallet. Now, a cold wallet, that's where you keep your digital assets that you don't want exposed to the internet. A wallet that never interacts with the internet can provide much greater protection from cyber threats. Maybe you don't want your wallet exposed to different exchanges and protocols, and you have absolutely no intention of participating in decentralized finance. Up until recently, the only options for third-party custodians were really limited to primarily just crypto exchanges. So a cold wallet truly was the only option to ensure that your assets stayed offline and out of the way of hackers and thieves. In fact, the only way someone can remotely access your crypto from a cold wallet is with your seed phrase. So you'll often hear in this ecosystem, not your keys, not your crypto. That's what they mean. A cold wallet, like I said, it typically is something that's physical. So it's something you could hold like a thumb drive, a USB, something the size of a credit card with a digital interface. And then I'll say this again, and I'll probably say it more and more again, but it's worth saying, if you lose access to that wallet seed phrase, you're likely to have lost access to your crypto forever. And that's the trade-off. You can have total control of your digital assets, but in exchange, you have to take total responsibility for protecting it.
And I think we've all heard or seen stories about people who have lost their cold wallet. There's a couple famous ones that circulate. People literally rummaging through dumpsters and looking through landfills because they lost their cold wallet, on which has access to hundreds of thousands, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars worth of crypto. So that is something that you don't want to lose or be in that position. That's not a position, Ramin, that a person who uses a trusted third-party custodian, that's not something they have to worry about. So let me grab Michael's question now that also came in during registration. He's asking for us to talk about some of the alternatives to the crypto wallet that Kristen was just talking about there when it comes to holding crypto assets.
So with custodial storage, you're contracting a regulated financial institution to hold and secure digital assets on your behalf. So everything we've talked about, that's really what you're asking the custodian to do for you. And so custodians like Fidelity Digital Assets, we invest huge amounts of capital in our kind of layers of physical, cyber, operational control infrastructure, all really to provide the highest level of security for those assets. And just as a reference point, we've been building and operating our custody platform at Fidelity for over 10 years now with hundreds of people. When a customer's assets are held in custody through Fidelity Crypto, those assets just sit in our wallets on your behalf until you ask us to do something with them, like sell your digital assets for cash or transfer. And while you hold assets with Fidelity Crypto, we do provide other services on top of that, and so you get things naturally that you'd expect through similar to a brokerage firm, right? For securities, where we do things like provide reporting on your holdings, dollar valuation based on market rates, provide statements, information for taxes, and then just overall provide you tools to help you manage your portfolio. Another benefit that we kind of alluded to is the integration with trading. Right. And so the ability to, within a single interface from an account that you log into, to be able to seamlessly trade through that account. You compare that to self-custody, which requires you to send assets either from your self-custody to an exchange in order to trade, or you're connecting your wallet to some DeFi platform in order to execute a trade or some transaction.
Got it. Okay. Another follow-up question here. This one comes in from a viewer named Nelda. When she registered, she said, will I need a wallet to hold the crypto, and how safe is a personal wallet? So Kristen, help people break down that understanding between self-custody and third party.
Yeah. So often you'll find that with a custodial, we operate under an omnibus structure, which is a combination of hot and cold storage. And that's really just to balance security and accessibility. The way it works here at Fidelity is we store a small portion of assets online in hot wallets so that customers can access their crypto quickly when they need it or want to withdraw. But the bulk of the assets we custody at Fidelity Digital Assets are actually in cold wallets to protect them. But more on the security of the omnibus structure later. And Nelda, if you choose to enable your crypto accounts for transfers here at Fidelity, your crypto account will be given a wallet address so that you can transfer crypto directly in or out of your Fidelity crypto account from another crypto exchange or a hot wallet or cold wallet. You'll even be able to track it, on the blockchain using that wallet address. But with that being said, your Fidelity crypto account is a custodial account. So you won't have to worry about remembering or securing or even knowing a seed phrase. Now, in regards to how safe a personal wallet is, Nelda, it's only as safe as the security measures you put into place in practice, like securing your seed phrase, being diligent about what you connect your personal wallet to. A good practice for that is to double check wallet addresses when you connect to them to make sure they're correct and not scam knockoffs. And another great security measure to put in place for safety is using two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is a security method that requires two forms of verification to access an account. Usually it's something like a password, and then something you have, like a phone or an app code.
Excellent. And we're going to talk a lot more about different security methods and procedures coming up in just a few minutes. So thank you for whetting our appetite there. But first, we want to do a real quick viewer poll for folks watching live right now, just making sure everyone's on the same page and that we can move on. So which of the following are true about crypto storage? A, if you store crypto in your own wallet, you own the keys. B, if you store crypto in a custodial account, that custodian, usually a financial institution, holds the keys. C, there's more responsibility to self-custody. If you lose your keys, you lose all your crypto. Or D, all of the above. And I will give people a moment to vote, but it looks like it's kind of a landslide, which is good. Sydney, what are the results telling us?
Yeah, wow, we had a fantastic response today. It looks like the majority of our viewers think that D, all of the above, is the answer.
And the majority of viewers, a solid 94% and counting, are correct. It is D, all of the above. So we are cool to move on. Next, we have a couple of viewer questions around the topic of Fidelity crypto custody and storage. I can also see some of these coming in the live chat as well. So we're going to answer a bunch now. Whatever we miss, we can cover a little bit later. We'll start with this one from Leonard, who says, I'd like to hear more about how Fidelity Digital Assets handles custody of digital assets. So Ramin, knowing that this is your area of expertise, I'll probably turn this in the next couple of questions over to you. How would you take Leonard and other people interested in a closer look at Fidelity crypto custody through that journey?
Yeah, so at Fidelity Digital Assets, we have a multi-layer security approach. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but those include layers of physical security, operational processes, and cybersecurity, and all collectively provide us with a control infrastructure in order to manage risk of loss as much as possible. And so this is really at the heart of really everything we do at Fidelity Digital Assets, and those controls are heavily invested in and operationalized across huge, large global teams. So as we talked about in terms of how the wallet is set up, so we have both hot and cold wallets, and they're omnibus, which we'll talk about a little bit more, which is where we hold all of our client assets. And a significant majority of those assets are held in offline cold wallets. We maintain only a small percentage of assets in hot wallets, and that's just because assets need to be in hot wallets in order to be able to facilitate transfers or settle trades. And so we have just a small amount that we hold in those wallets in order to facilitate kind of client needs for transfers. Those offline wallets, I think, really important to note when we talk about cold wallets. What that means is that they are offline and they have never been online. And so the way we do this is that keys are generated fully offline, and then they're held in these special purpose key management hardware called HSMs. Our HSMs are distributed globally in locations with multiple layers of physical security. And accessing any funds from those cold wallets requires pretty complex orchestration and approvals from multiple people across the firm in order to access multiple of those facilities, like I said, that are globally distributed. So I'll go back to the omnibus wallet structure just to talk about how that works. So the omnibus structure basically means that we have a set of wallets, not a single wallet, but many wallets that we hold, and we use for all client funds. We then segregate the ownership of those funds in our books and records, which are off-chain, so we can have individual client holdings there. I'll say this is a really purposeful design decision that we've made. We feel like it gives us the highest level of security, where we can, like I talked about, maintain a significant majority of the assets in offline, the highest level of security wallets, but then still have sufficient ready-to-use assets in hot wallets to facilitate requests for transfers or trade settlement.
And so thank you for that. That's a real nuts and bolts answer. But when Rob registered, he asked us to do a little bit more of an evaluative approach to the same question. He said, will you talk more about the pros and cons of holding crypto with an institution like Fidelity versus owning crypto outright in a wallet? So how would you hit us with some pros and cons, Ramin?
Yeah, so I spoke earlier about what it means to use a custodian. We can provide many of those same capabilities that you could facilitate on your behalf, like trading. There's a slide here that we'll show that gives just a couple of bullet points here, but I'll just provide a little bit of explanation. So self-custody versus custody through a custodian, I think there's pros and cons of each. For a custodian, someone that wants to choose a custodian, that might be better for someone that wants a simple experience. So they want the convenience and simplicity of having a single or maybe multiple third-party custodians that are handling all of the security around their crypto for them. Especially, it's going to be good for someone that's newer to crypto, or just, again, wants that simple experience, or enjoys the fact that experience is kind of integrated with a broader experience with their brokerage accounts and other financial accounts. It's also, those that are very savvy with crypto have been doing this for a while and can understand how to protect their wallets. They may opt for self-custody, but I will just stress, you have to be really vigilant when you're self-custodying and kind of have great hygiene around those accounts and the devices. And we talked a lot in detail about how a custodian like Fidelity Digital Assets invests and has capabilities like 24/7 cybersecurity monitoring. And those are really hard to replicate as an individual that's self-custodying. So even when someone's well-versed in this space and maybe has done this for a while, they may opt for using a custodian just because they want the kind of the security of using a custodian. On the other hand, someone may use self-custody, again, if they're more familiar and active in digital assets, but particularly if they want to participate in DeFi activity. And so DeFi just meaning, decentralized exchanges. So like Web3 applications where you're connecting your wallet in order to go trade or access lending, things like that. I think that's probably the biggest benefit. And then just important to note, like we've talked about before, when you are self-custodying, you are fully responsible for managing the security of your keys yourself. If something happens, you make a mistake, you lose your seed, or someone accesses your wallet, you really have nobody to call. And given the nature of digital assets, it's very unlikely that you'll ever get those funds back.
One more clarifying question for you, Ramin. It's an echo of a question that you've already answered, but I can see it coming up in the live chat as well as from registration. Phyllis wants to know, does Fidelity have wallets for holding our crypto? So a real quick refresher on how it happens here.
Yes. So quickly, I'll say Fidelity has wallets. We have many wallets, and we use those in the omnibus structure that we talked about to hold all of our customers' crypto. Customers have accounts on our platform, which then represent the ownership of those assets. Customers do not have their own wallets on the blockchain in this model.
Got it. Okay, so that's a lot of the how to store cryptocurrency with Fidelity Crypto. Let's talk more about safety and security as promised. Kristen, you touched on this a minute ago, but let's dive deeper on some very specific things people can do to protect their digital assets. We have a great registration question that came in from Reggie. He wrote in and said, other people I know who have tried to invest in crypto have had their Bitcoins stolen from their digital wallets. How can I protect my Bitcoins to prevent that from happening to me? So Kristen, that's a big question. Over to you. And I would just note, Reggie is asking specifically about Bitcoin here, but what you're about to talk about is obviously relevant to all digital assets and really all digital accounts that anybody watching might have.
That's correct. And I can share 4 quick ones here. I've said it before and I'll say it again because it's just that important. Number 1, when dealing with a personal wallet, whether it's a hot or a cold wallet, never share your seed phrase, which again is that sequence of words that can act as the master key to your crypto wallet. I actually store my seed phrase in a Faraday bag, which is a pouch that also protects against wireless signals and electromagnetic damage. And some of them are even fireproof. Mine's fireproof. I also keep my laptop with my hot wallets in the Faraday bag as well, since they're online and more susceptible to security vulnerabilities.
And that's called a Faraday bag? I literally had never heard of that until you said it.
Yep, a Faraday bag, Faraday.
Cool. All right, thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. Number 2, if you're going to interact with the DeFi protocol, always double check the URL. Take it from me because I had to learn this one the hard way. Please let my loss be your lesson. Good practice is to favorite or bookmark a website once you confirm it's the right URL if you know you'll be using it again. Oftentimes you'll see these scammers put up a perfect replica of a website, and the only thing they'll change is .com to .org, or maybe they'll switch 2 letters in the URL. So you want to be vigilant about that. And number 3, use 2-factor authentication anytime you have your assets with a custodian. So if you want to send your funds off platform, you'll have to confirm it through a second method like an email, a text, or an authenticator app. This makes it harder for hackers because they need to know more than just your crypto account, they need to have more than access to your crypto account to send crypto off of the account. And then lastly, just double check and triple check those wallet addresses when you do send crypto out of your wallet address or out of your wallet. And never, ever, 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 ever send crypto to someone that you do not know.
I'm sure people watching right now are kind of like respectfully rolling their eyes at that, but it happens, right? It happens so much, which is why you have to remind people that you can't do that. It seems like common sense until you're in the moment, you feel tempted, and then you make a big mistake that you likely cannot undo. So thank you for that reminder. Ramin, how about for folks who are interested in maybe Fidelity Crypto as their trusted third party? I got a couple of questions to help you guide your answer to how that all works. Does Fidelity Digital Assets provide secure third-party custody of crypto? We can revisit that. Does it generate yield? That's a new question. And then how does Fidelity Digital Assets financially protect Fidelity Crypto investors from the potential instantaneous loss or catastrophic loss of any particular digital investment?
So I'll try to break these questions down a bit. So first on yield. So we do not currently offer any yield for digital assets held in Fidelity Crypto accounts. I think important to note here, Fidelity Digital Assets does not rehypothecate any assets in custody. So rehypothecate basically means a practice where you are redeploying those assets in order to earn yield for the custodian. So we simply are just holding the assets in our wallets until customers ask us to do something with them, like sell or transfer. And then I'll talk about security. So we've covered a lot of this covered this a lot. So, we have layers of controls, cyber, physical, operational controls, where we're really hardening our controls around our wallet, right? So managing risk of loss there. We continue to invest in comprehensive and layered controls around that. And then on top of that, I'd say we offer a lot of education as well as tools for customers to protect themselves and their accounts. So things like two-factor authentication and other methods where customers can protect their accounts.
And just to double down on Bruce's question, that second one there, it's just worth noting that cryptocurrencies are volatile and risky no matter where you store them. So it's very important to do your research, make sure you're comfortable with what you're investing in, you understand its use cases, you understand your personal risk tolerance and your personal timeline. All of that is super important. And also, as we said right off the top of the show, always remember that cryptocurrencies are not insured by the FDIC or the SIPC. So you can have all of the protections in place and your seed phrase can be perfectly well maintained, but the underlying assets themselves remain very volatile and very risky. And I'll turn it over to you, Kristen, if you have anything else to add about that.
Yeah, I would say for like any hikers or outdoor enthusiasts here, or even if you're the type of person that just likes to watch that type of stuff on TV, crypto's volatility is like weather in the mountains. 1 minute it's calm and sunny, and then you can blink and the next it's stormy out of nowhere. So just remember that proper preparation for that risk is helpful before you take the hike. You can't always make decisions based on the current forecast. And just like mountain weather, crypto prices can rise or fall very quickly based on different events like regulatory changes, even social media posts from influential figures. It's still a relatively new asset class in the grand scheme of things. So you have to make sure that you understand that risk. So yes, to answer Bruce's question too, it's important to know that there isn't a magic way to insure against total loss.
Got it. We've covered so much today. I'd love it if each of you could just spend a couple minutes reflecting on what you think the biggest takeaways are for anybody watching right now in terms of custody and safety and security and storage. And Kristen, we'll start with you.
Yeah. When it comes to crypto or storing crypto, think of it like you are the CEO, board, and investors of your own bank, because essentially you are. You're in charge of everything. And then make sure you allocate your digital assets accordingly. Do it in a way that allows you to protect your assets, but also be able to access them in a practical manner. Hot wallets are convenient and they offer fast access, but they also have online exposure. So only keep what you need for short-term use. And on the opposite end, think of cold wallets like a savings account. It's offline and only you need to know your seed phrase. So they're harder to hack. And they make for a decent option for someone that wants to retain full custody of their money. Now, for those that don't want the stress and responsibility of remembering a seed phrase, custodial wallets make for an easy option as well. If there's a custodian you trust, like Fidelity, to protect your money. As a security best practice for myself, I actually choose to diversify my storage options. I have multiple hot wallets across my laptop and my phone. I have 2 cold wallets, and then I actually keep the majority of the Bitcoin that I own, and I plan on holding for decades with my trusted custodian, which happens to be Fidelity. I also make sure that I keep my self-custody devices software up to date, and always, always, always use two-factor authentication when dealing with a custodian.
Thank you for that, Kristen. Also buried inside your answer there is the point that we should have made earlier. It's not a zero-sum game. You can choose different options. You don't have to go all in or one or the other. You have different options, and you can allocate your investments as you see fit, as you're comfortable with. So, Ramin, for those who might see fit to do a trusted third-party custodian, walk us through again the highlights for Fidelity Crypto as offered by Fidelity Digital Assets.
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Kristen just said. So we'll stress the importance of having good security hygiene with your accounts. So crypto accounts, your wallets, other financial accounts. So that means unique passwords, setting up strong multi-factor authentication. And then for digital assets in particular, custodians like Fidelity Digital Assets and through Fidelity Crypto will offer tools for security. So things like pre-saving digital asset instructions. And so the combination of all these things are really important to protect your assets. And then I'll say it's really important to be watching out for phishing and other scams. At Fidelity, we try to provide you with education and security tools to protect your account, but you really need to be vigilant and protect yourself as well. We do have some resources available. So one in particular is fidelity.com/tech scams. It's a good resource just to understand one of the most recent digital scams out there. So probably a good place to start, but I'd say these are always evolving, and so just important to be vigilant.
Yeah, excellent reminder there. The bad guys always feel like they're trying to stay one step ahead of us. So thank you for sharing that. We're just about at time now. So Ramin, Kristen, Sydney, thank you all for taking time out of your schedule to help with the live stream. And to everybody watching and participating, engaging, taking part in our polls, answering and asking questions, thank you as well. If you want to continue.
Hello, and thank you for joining Women Talk Money. My name is Alex Roca, and I will be your host for today's conversation. Welcome to our Back to School two-part series. If you missed last week on spending, saving, and paying down debt, you'll be able to catch the replay on YouTube. Today is lesson 2, focusing on investing fundamentals. So whether you're just looking to get started or you want to brush up on the basics, you've made it to the right place. With me today are 2 Fidelity panelists, Sasha Heathman, a workplace financial consultant out of the Chicago area, and Danny Stadelman. She's an investment consultant in the Massachusetts area. I am so glad that you're both here with us today. There's a lot that we're going to cover in today's conversation, so we're going to jump right in. Sasha, investing can feel like a lot. So what's something that you wish you knew before you even started investing?
Sure. So something I wish I knew is really the importance of getting started. The earlier, the better, but there's no wrong place to start. And really utilizing the power of compounding interest, which I can really relate to my clients because growing up, money was never a topic that we talked about. And I worked so many jobs in my teenage years, but by the time I graduated from college, I really had nothing to show for it, but a ton of student loan debt. So what I really didn't understand was that even with small amounts, it really has the potential to add up over time. And it can be discouraging early on when you only have so much to save, and then you see your balance, then you compare that to the things that you're aspiring for or your financial goals. It just doesn't feel possible. But every little bit does count. And it's really, when you're looking back that you can actually see that. So investing can really be a great way to help you achieve your goals. And as we like to say, it's a way for you to make your money work as hard as you do.
I'll actually add to that, Sasha. That is really well said. Investing can be so overwhelming. Especially if you've never done it before. I mean, there's so much jargon, different terms, and let's face it, there's a lot of risk involved. So what I would say is I never want that to stop anybody really from getting started. And I think that's what paralyzes us up front. It's all about taking some time up front to really feel comfortable just with the basics so that you can then learn over time more of the education that will help you be successful. And by the way, that's why Sasha and I are here. We are here to help our clients with a lot of the terminology and decisions that you may have ahead.
That's perfect. Get comfortable with the basics. The good news is that's our goal today, to help you with exactly that. So what else should you keep in mind before you get started? Sasha, let's start with you.
Yes, so in the spirit of learning and education, we are in our Back to Basics series. Building off last week's event on saving and paying down debt, you want to make sure that you've built that solid financial foundation and you feel secure in your day-to-day expenses. And that really helps you feel more prepared to be able to plan beyond that, right? Beyond your student loan payment or beyond, paying your electric bill. So we have a little slide to give you a refresher on what that means. And, first, here's a hierarchy of financial priorities to, again, really build that financial foundation. So you always want to pay down your high interest credit card or high interest debt, which is usually credit cards. And you always want to make sure you pay those minimum payments to stay on time. Then ideally, we want to have that emergency fund, right? So if something were to go awry, you want to make sure that you're not going to fall further into debt to try and overcome an emergency. And ideally, you want, 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses. But if you don't have an emergency fund yet, start small. Start your goal small. Give yourself a $500 goal, then push yourself to $1,000, then keep going until you've hit that 3 to 6 month mark. You also want to make sure you're consistently contributing to your employer retirement plan, your 401k or 403b, if you do have access to that. You always want to make sure you're at least getting your full employer match. Ideally, just like with our emergency fund goal, set it small and then keep on working towards a higher goal. So set your minimum is your employer match if you have one, and then keep working towards that 15% guideline. And then speaking of goals, usually when we think of investing, we jump right into what should we invest in: mutual funds, stocks. But it's really important to start with what you're investing for. What is your financial intention? What's your goal behind wanting to invest? And Danny mentioned previously, investing involves risk. So what are you taking risks for? And that will really help build your confidence that, when you see your balance go up and down along the way, what the end goal is.
I think that's so powerful, Sasha. With that in mind, Danny, what questions should you be asking yourself if you are interested in investing?
Yes, I think there's probably a lot of questions our audience have, but really start with the key 5 questions. Start with your why. Why are you seeking out the help from an advisor, or why are you saving? What is that intent, as Sasha said, and what are you investing for? Next would be the timeline. When do you think you might need to use this money? So, you don't have to have an exact date, but really, is it a few years, or are we talking about decades? Next would be, how much money do you have to start with? So you can start investing with as little as $1, but some investments do have minimums, and that's something you have to consider. So decide on how much you're going to start investing from the onset, and then that's probably going to have some role in the choices that you may make moving forward. And then, how comfortable are you with risk? So when you think about your savings, what is that gut feeling or that tolerance for the ups and downs in the market? That's something that's really important to be sharing with your advisor or yourself, and just really getting that right. And then lastly, are you looking to do this on your own, or are you looking to have some professional help? So there are a few ways, different ways to invest. And you can pick individual stocks, bonds. You can invest in mutual funds or ETFs, exchange traded funds. You can also explore, the digital investment management, or you can also hire a professional money manager. So it really depends on how involved you're looking to be with your portfolio. And if you are looking to pick individual stocks, you first need to really learn about researching those stocks, building a diversified portfolio, and so much more. these are things in education that we will obviously provide our clients. It is doable. I have a lot of self-directed clients, but it can take a lot of time. So really just kind of, button down, do I really have the will to do this, the skill to do this, and more importantly, the time? And it's not impossible. It is a full-time job to manage your portfolio for the long haul. People do it every day and they're very successful. And a lot of times we can come to the table with guidance and resources to help our self-directed investors be very successful. The other option is you can look into professional investment management. And a professional like myself or Sasha, we can help you with that decision.
Now, I know that we're going to talk a little bit more about investing options later on. So let's just stay in the classroom for now. Danny, you touched on risk. A term that we hear often when we talk about investing is risk tolerance. So Sasha, can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Sure. So yeah, Danny mentioned earlier, investing has a whole lot of new terminology and jargon, but I'm so glad that you all are here for it. So I'm going to pull up a nice little visual so that we can see a few of those terms. So specifically risk tolerance, it's really about how comfortable you are with seeing your balance go up and down. Right? Investing involves risk of gain, risk of loss. There's uncertainty, and there is possibility that you might lose money while investing. And so in general, the more risk you're willing to tolerate, the larger the potential investment gains. And right, you're that much closer to accomplishing your financial goals. But also, right, you have to see both sides of it, that with gains also can come losses, but really your comfort level with the two can pay off when you look at investing for the long term. So to help balance, right, the risk of loss and then also potential reward, you can spread out that risk among your investment choices. And there's two investment concepts on the screen that I want to point out that can help with managing that risk. And those two terms are on the far right: asset allocation and diversification. So asset allocation simply means the combination of investment types, the combination of stocks, bonds, and cash that you design either through a mutual fund or, as Danny mentioned, as a self-directed investor. But it's your combination of those different investment types to help create the potential reward or desired outcome in terms of investment returns. Then we look at the other term right below it is called diversification, which diversification simply means spreading your money within those different investment types. And here's where that term, don't put all your eggs in one basket, fits in. So by investing, so specifically, let's talk about stocks, for example, by investing across different companies, different industries, countries, size of the companies, you can really have a greater potential for growth because your overall portfolio isn't dependent on that one hen or that one investment type or stock. Now, neither of these ensure profit or guarantee against loss, but again, it can help smooth out that ride on your financial journey so that at the end of the day, you are on the right track to accomplish your financial goals.
That's great, Sasha. And actually, I want to dig in just a little bit more here. How would you determine what the right asset allocation is for you?
So ideally, there's several factors that can help an investor determine which investment mix or asset allocation makes sense. The easiest factor to identify is time. And Danny had mentioned that earlier. One big question to ask yourself is, right, what's your time frame? So the sooner that you need your money, then the less risk you want to take, because you want to remove some of that uncertainty of, will I hit my goal or will I not? And then vice versa, the further away you are from needing your money, then the more risk that you may want to take so that you have that greater growth potential and can accomplish your financial goal a little bit sooner. So time is a really easy indicator, but some other factors to consider would be, of course, your comfort level with that, right? So risk tolerance. What is your actual financial goal? Your overall financial picture, and then maybe even age if you're investing for something like retirement. So choosing your investment mix, or again, that asset allocation, it is one of the most important decisions you're going to make. And then this chart here, it does illustrate, number one, investing, but then of course, investing at the right level of risk that you feel comfortable with. And then of course, that your goal requests of you. So as you can see here, just from left to right, the sooner you need your money, the more to the left you want to be, and then vice versa. So I do want to focus your attention on the bottom half of this chart because it does illustrate, right? Investing involves risk of gain, risk of loss. And so when you look at, the worst and the best 12-month, this is exactly why being mindful of your time frame is important. So, right, an emergency fund, you wouldn't want that to drop below your current balance because, right, if your car gets towed, I live in Chicago, if your car gets towed, you need $600 to get it out. You don't want to have to sell a stock or something and then not have the $600. And then vice versa, right? So a 5-year time frame, the further out you are from needing your money, the more risk that you could take for that higher growth potential. And so everyone's situation, right, is different, and we all have different comforts with seeing our balance go up and down. So please don't be afraid to ask for help. This is a topic that Danny and I talk about with our clients every single day. And, depending on how your different investments perform over time, your investment mix will likely change, or your goals might change, your life circumstances might change. So it's always important for you to review your asset allocation periodically to make sure that your investment choices still align with your goals and preferences.
Yes, life happens, right? And when life happens, we have to look at the plan again. I completely understand that. Okay, so once we have an understanding of what our goals are, what our timeline looks like, and more or less what our risk tolerance could be, Danny, how do you go about actually choosing an account?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alex. You'll want to pick an account really that's going to align with your goals. I have a slide here that could really help. So we've really broken it out into 4 big or key categories by goal. There are so many different IRA options for saving outside of your employer retirement plan. So that's one. For general investing, trading, you might consider the Fidelity brokerage account. You also have, for qualified medical expenses, you could consider an HSA, which is a health savings account, right? If you are a participant in a high deductible health plan. And then for kids, if you have children, there are a number of options such as 529s for education. There's also the Fidelity Youth account where they can get started right at age 13. So you can scan the QR code below to take a quick quiz, and that'll help you decide. Don't forget about Sasha and I. We are also here to help you make that decision.
Okay, so after you've determined the right account based on your specific goal, what comes next, Danny?
Yeah, so next you'll have to fund the account, right? So here at Fidelity, you can link your bank account, nice and easy. Everything's digital. You can transfer money anytime, back and forth between Fidelity and your bank. And you can also set up automatic deposits if you wish, if that's something that would help keep you simplified, keep your finances simplified for you. But keep in mind, when you do add money into any account here at Fidelity, that generally does not mean that it's going to get invested just yet. So in many accounts, the money is automatically held in cash, and that's likely in a money market, or you can choose an FDIC sweep or deposit holding. You have to take also the next step and invest those dollars into an investment like a mutual fund, an exchange traded fund or ETF, a stock or a bond of your choosing. And that really will bring me to what comes next. So using the money that you've deposited into your account to actually buy these investments. Now, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, and there's lots of you out there, Here's an example on this slide of what buying an investment or placing a trade at Fidelity really looks like. So in order to place the trade, it's as really as, first you want to choose what type of investment, right? Is it a stock? Is it a mutual fund? Second, you want to choose the account that you would like to place the trade in and that you want to buy the investment in. Third is you would put in the symbol or the ticker for that position. And then next you decide if you're going to do dollars or shares. How do you want to purchase it? And make that selection. And this is an actionable buy, right? You're buying the investment. So when using the trading tool, that's what you would choose. And then, of course, you would just be able to then review or preview your order before submitting it and placing it. There are other things too where you can choose if it's going to be a market order or a limit order. So sometimes a lot of this clients just want to go through directly with one of us here that's available to you locally in your branches. We can show you how to do this, walk you through it.
Appreciate that, Danny. In fact, we're going to place a link in the chat right now. It's basically our step-by-step guide on how to trade stocks and ETFs at Fidelity. So even though Danny did a fantastic job explaining that, if you want that step-by-step guide, you have it in the chat. Now, let's talk a little bit more about selecting and buying an investment and some of the common types of investments that people can consider. Sasha, can you help explain that a little more?
Sure. So this is the part of investing and saving and investing towards a goal that can feel very overwhelming because there is a lot of choice. So you have mutual funds, stocks, bonds, ETFs, thousands that you can select from. But I want you to know that investing can be as simple or as complicated as you personally want to make it. And again, you are not alone in figuring out what makes sense for you. But at Fidelity, we are huge on, financial empowerment and education, which is why we're here. So I do want to talk about three investment types that we get asked about the most, and that's stocks, mutual funds, and exchange traded funds, or abbreviated, it's called ETFs. So a stock is just a share of ownership of a company. So owning one does involve both the potential risk and reward, but it is based on the performance of that particular company. And a well-renowned investor, Peter Lynch, used to say, buy what you know. Right? So think about some of the products that you use in your everyday life. And if you want to research individual stocks, those are great companies to start with, right? Because you are already a customer of those products. So why not also become the owner of those products? So buying individual stocks one by one, it can take a lot of research. They have to report quarterly earnings. There are a few other details about the company that you'll want to pay attention to. And then it also is important to build up a diversified account. Remember, we talked about don't put all your eggs in one basket. And really due to the time and research, potential risks of any one company, new investors who are just getting started may want to look at some other options that kind of put together baskets of either individual stocks or baskets of individual investment types. So if you want to explore other investments that can kind of help alleviate some of that research from you, that's exactly what a mutual fund or an ETF can do for you. And so a common question I get in appointments is, right, what's the difference? So let's first define, right, what is a mutual fund? What is an ETF? Both are professionally selected baskets of investments that can include a combination of stocks, bonds, and other securities, just like that asset allocation concept we talked about. Some can be exclusively stock, exclusively bonds. And when you buy one share of a mutual fund or an ETF, you are buying, again, shares in a portfolio of investments that were selected by a mutual fund manager. So by definition, a mutual fund and ETF, it does invest in multiple investment types to add that extra layer of diversification. So we'll first elaborate a little bit more on mutual funds. And so mutual funds, there are two main styles, if you will. So there are what's called actively managed mutual funds and then passively managed mutual funds, which I'm sure everyone has heard the term index funds. That is the same thing as a passively managed mutual fund. So an actively managed mutual fund means that you have a financial professional, mutual fund manager, doing the research, paying attention to those quarterly earnings, forward looking, what new innovations are individual companies coming out with, and how are their customers going to receive that information. So mutual fund managers and their teams. So it's not any one person, it's a team effort, which is why, right, it takes a lot of time and energy to do research. But those mutual fund managers and their teams carefully select all of the investments within the fund, and they do adjust the holdings or the stocks that they buy within their fund in response to real-time trends, events, legislation, if you will, in an attempt to outperform the market. So actively managed mutual funds, because they are actively engaged in real-time information, they do tend to have higher expense ratios than their counterparts, which again are called index funds or passively managed funds. So an index fund, that's where a portfolio manager simply picks investments to mirror an index or mirror the composition and performance of that specific index, like the S&P 500, which is simply a grouping of the 500 biggest companies in America. Now, because index funds are simply mirroring the index, the expense ratios tend to be lower. So in a nutshell, those are two key styles that you can look for with mutual funds. And then with ETFs, right, those have the same kind of diversification. They also are, some are actively managed, some are passively managed, but a key difference between an ETF and a mutual fund is how they are traded, which all that means, Danny showed you what's called the trade ticket, which is where you actually buy your investments within your account. An ETF can be bought and sold throughout the day, just like an individual stock can. Whereas mutual funds, they only trade once per day. So if you were to buy a mutual fund at 9 a.m., you actually wouldn't be buying it at 9 a.m. Central. I forgot we have viewers from everywhere. 9 a.m. Central, then it wouldn't be until 3 p.m. Central that your mutual fund purchase would be going through. So it's really about how active that you want to be in the day-to-day buying and selling of your investment choices. But yes, ETFs, mutual funds, very similar in the diversification front. It's really going to be on that trade flexibility that can really help steer you one way or another, or a combination of all. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this is where investing can get intimidating because, right, there's thousands of choices to choose from, but Fidelity has a ton of tools that are accessible to you. A mutual fund selector tool, for example, you can go in and just plug in some criteria. Plug in your criteria, and that'll really help narrow down your choices.
I appreciate that, Sasha, because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking that sounds like a lot of options, and we only talked about 3 investment types. So what else can we do to try to narrow down those options?
Yes. So number one is just start with, again, your why. Danny mentioned, right, what are some questions to ask yourself before you jump into investing? What's your goal? Because, right, once you know what you're investing for and the timeline, then your next step is, right, what's your asset allocation that you're looking for? And then once you have your asset allocation, then we can dive into, right, what specific investment types are we going to put together to create that strategy? And so, as I mentioned earlier, we do have at Fidelity a research tool called the Mutual Fund Selector, and you can narrow down that list of 8,000 and narrow it down based on the investment purpose of that fund. So an investment purpose is called a fund objective. So a fund objective could be seeks total return until target date, or seeks total return with the largest 500 companies in America. Those are just a couple of examples. Something else, especially if you're nearing retirement, could be to provide inflation protection and income. So to give you a little bit of an idea of what that means, 2 criteria or objectives, to use as an example, many of you might have heard of target date funds, right? Because they are often used when someone is investing toward a particular date, like retirement. And you very well could see a target date fund inside your retirement plan, like a 401k and 403b. And something I forgot to mention earlier is that if you already have a 401k, a 403b, or even a self-employed IRA, you're already an investor. You're already investing your money. And so with a target date fund, the objective there is they start off more aggressive or more stock heavy the further away we are from that date. And then the more conservative that one mutual fund becomes as we get closer and closer to that specific date, because it already knows you're nearing specifically retirement if you're using it for that goal. Another example of criteria that you could search for within the mutual fund selector is a target allocation fund, which again, if you want to just invest at a certain level of risk, but maybe you don't have the time or the energy to do all the research involved in, selecting stocks or ETFs, then instead of using a date as a goal, you could use your comfort level with risk. So if you're someone who has been hesitant to invest because of the market ups and downs, or because you're intimidated because there's so much choice, then utilizing one of these simplified investment choices, or maybe even starting off with a conservative investment strategy may make sense. And then on the flip side, right, if you're comfortable with market ups and downs and you're aiming for that potential more aggressive returns, then you can definitely pick a strategy for that. There's really something for every type of investor.
So Danny, I want to bring it back to you because you mentioned earlier that there are options for those of us that don't want to pick and choose our own investments for whatever the reason. Maybe we don't have the time or we don't really know how to. Can you walk us through those options?
Sure. So the first, I think that's most important for us to understand the difference between financial planning, which is what I do every single day, and professional investment management, which is not what I do every single day. So I work with clients basically to co-create a solid financial plan. And that really is to give them the utmost peace of mind and confidence for today and the road ahead. And by the way, that's at no additional cost to you as a Fidelity customer. So depending on a customer's situation, I may also bring in a matter expert, right? A subject matter expert, depending on where the conversation is leading, so that we ensure that our clients have the crystal clear understanding of any decisions that they may have to make or next steps that they have to take. Sometimes my clients, they may want to manage some of their money on their own, or all of their money on their own. So in that case, a professional like me can help them figure out what exactly they're going to need for support here at Fidelity. This is also where professional investment management might also come in if there is, an opportunity or a desire for the client where they don't want to do all the work themselves and they would prefer to delegate that work to a Fidelity professional investment manager. So generally, there are going to be advisory fees that's going to be associated with professional management. Now, I would say for, just a general definition of a managed account, this is basically where you will open and fund an account, but all of the investment decisions will be made on your behalf. So you're really not having to do all the research and the trading, etc. So you'll just fund the account. Someone else will handle it for you, all the investing. And then there was an event recently about what goes on behind the scenes when you have a managed account. So we'll link that replay in the chat. So if you wanted to take a look at that, but basically there's 2 main types of managed accounts. What we have is digital advice, or we also have access to advisors, such as myself. There is no one size fits all. It is very hard to outgrow Fidelity. So we have solutions and we have advisors for all levels of clients. Now, the digital experience, you may have heard of this it was called robo-advising. So that's a digital advisor. We do offer that, and some offer a hybrid approach with access to advisors. And one of the things, our digital option here at Fidelity, that's called Fidelity Go. So you will see that if you do pop that into the fidelity.com search tool. There's no minimum to open up this account, and you can even get invested for as low as $10. Professional management. This is where you will broaden your relationship, right? So now you'll have access to a team of advisors. I actually sit on a team locally here in Massachusetts, and you will have that one-on-one relationship working with that dedicated advisor and their team. And they're going to work on an investment. They will work directly with the investment team to help you reach your goals. So one of the great things I would say about Fidelity is that as you grow, we have a robust offering to help you grow and help you grow successfully. So all you have to do is just give us a call. We can help you figure that out. And Sasha and I, we help so many clients in this way.
How often should you be checking in? What should you be looking for when you do check in? Danny, can you answer that?
Yeah, that's actually really, really good questions. I would say how you monitor and manage your investments is really going to depend on the type of investments that you've made or you have, right? So if you're someone who's picking stocks, you're probably going to be reviewing, your investments a lot more heavily. With mutual funds and ETFs, as Sasha was explaining earlier, these are a basket of investments inside of the fund. You might be checking maybe more on a quarterly basis for that. If you're someone who's investing in a specific goal outside of retirement, such as a down payment on your first home, maybe you have an upcoming wedding, an annual review might be more appropriate, just so that we can build that into your financial plan, so that you still have the success moving forward. And I would say too, just like you had asked yourself questions before beginning to invest, if you remember those 5 key questions at the beginning of this webinar, when you check in, consider asking yourself these extra questions. Do your accounts still feel like the right fit for your goals? Are your investments diversified? Because that is really important. And are you comfortable with the risk level? Sometimes that just needs to be tweaked or adjusted. And if you're a do-it-yourselfer or self-directed, when it comes to investing, does it still feel right? Does it still feel like a good fit? Is this how you want to spend your time moving forward? It is doable. I will say it's a full-time job to manage a portfolio, your own savings, but managing your own portfolio, that skill and time that it takes, we can educate you. Any advisor here can educate you on how to be successful. And if you're still feeling uncertain, we can help with that too.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. We're running up on time. So I want to ask, because this feels like a lot sometimes. So let's talk about the additional small moves that we can make today that could still make a meaningful difference in the long run. Sasha, what would you suggest?
Getting started with what you have. You don't need a lot of money to get started with investing. You can start with as little as $1. And we have a slide that really illustrates that, the power of small amounts, the power of 1%. So as you can see here, right, compounding growth means you start off small and then you let your money do the heavy lifting for you. Don't get me wrong, you're still saving, you have an active part in it, but right, your investment choices definitely help give you that lift. So get started.
What about you, Danny? What would you say is the focus?
The strong focus is absolutely don't wait, right? It's definitely, let's get moving, take action when you can. And I would say there's never a better time than now. So that would be my advice.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not just about how much you're investing, but how often. So making sure that you automate those savings and that you stay consistent with that investment strategy that you decide to move forward with. So thank you for sharing that. I do want to ask, just in general, what would you say is your top lesson that you would want people to take away from our session today? Danny, let's start with you.
Don't wait. Don't let yourself get paralyzed. Please call us. Let us help you, and we will. And I will say very, very vulnerably here. There was a time before I studied for my licenses to come into this industry and be able to help more people with the fears I used to have. So it's not intimidating once you sit down with an advisor like Sasha and I, where we will break things down for you. You will understand. And our ultimate goal is to help you have more peace of mind and confidence for the road ahead.
Thank you for that, Danny. And Sasha, what would you say?
I would say start with your why. So even when the road gets bumpy, if you will, right? The markets are volatile. You can see your account balance up one day, down another. But when you think about what the purpose is, right? Thinking about your why, staying focused on what the money is for, that can really help you stay the course. And then, of course, if you need any support or you just need that reassurance, hey, have I made the right decisions? Danny gave a lot of great self-reflection questions to think about. Remember, you're not alone in figuring it out. Advisors like me and Danny, we can help you along the way so that you feel confident that you're on the right track.
Absolutely. And I want to make a comment before we wrap up, because a comment that we get quite often in every single one of the sessions and the questions that are submitted before the sessions, we hear this question time and time again: is it too late? And the answer is no, it's not. It's never too late. Yes, it would have been great had you started at 22, but most of us don't. So just start today, wherever you are, whether that's a call to someone like Danny or Sasha, whether that's just downloading the presentation to give yourself a checklist to go through. Just start where you are, and you'll be better than if you didn't start at all. So Sasha, Danny, thank you so much for everything that you shared today. We have a slide that we're going to pull up in just a moment here. It's going to share some of the upcoming events, and it also has a QR code to remind you how else you can get help. And make sure that you share with a friend or a family member so that they can get in on the conversation as well. If you haven't already, make sure to join the community. So scan that QR code, download the calendar holds for the upcoming events, and we'll see you again soon. That's a wrap. Danny, Sasha, thank you again. And thank you all for watching, for joining. I hope you have a great day.